Welcome! As a lot of long-time subscribers and viewers of the channel know, one of my big passions, aside from collecting records, collecting other music formats, is documentaries, be them TV series or films. I'm just a massive documentary fan. I've done a few, not as many as I would have liked, to be honest, documentary reviews on the channel, and you can find them in the film and documentary reviews playlist. But I love watching them, I love streaming them. You know, some of my particular favourites have been ones that Netflix have brought out over the years. I like their true crime library, I like their kind of in-depth looks at certain British incidents and scandals. I'm just a massive super fan of the genre. People will be asked, what's your favourite film genre? And it could be anything, you know, sci-fi, comedy, superhero bollocks. But for me, I will always say first and foremost, I like a documentary. That's my top thing. One of my favourite documentarians is someone, and some of his films I've seen many times, and we'll get into that later on as I go through all these here. But one of my favourite documentary filmmakers for years now has been Nick Broomfield, who began really in the early 70s, kind of fresh out of film school really. In fact, I think his very first film, which I'll show you in a moment, was actually a project he recorded while he was still in film school. Nick Broomfield, to me, I get why he's kind of Marmite to some people. A lot of people think that certainly as his career progressed into the late 80s and into the 1990s and beyond, that he kind of started inserting himself more in his own films, and he sort of became almost like a character in some of them really, and they found him kind of a little bit intrusive at times. But I think that he is an important figure in documentary filmmaking because he kind of paved the way for rather more modern, if that's the right term, because even some of these people have been going for a number of years now, but sort of more current and contemporary documentary makers like Louis Theroux, for instance. You know, there's a lot of similarities between how Louis Theroux makes his films and Nick Broomfield makes his. But for me, Broomfield was the originator in all that, kind of like being the fly on the wall, and certainly that was the case in much of his early work in the 70s and part of the 80s. But then this sort of fly on the wall became more kind of a fly on the camera really. But by the by, generally I enjoy Broomfield's work, some more than others. In recent weeks, months, I quite fancied just building up a bit of a physical DVD and Blu-ray Nick Broomfield library. I'd found some excellent deals on eBay, and also I picked up some things from HMV as well. And I want to show you my entire, as it stands right now, Nick Broomfield DVD and Blu-ray collection. So these aren't in any order of when I bought them, and although I've kind of vaguely tried to keep a chronological order, you'll see that I can't really do that either, just by the way some of these box sets here have separated different films out. But we'll get started with this 4-disc set here, and it's Nick Broomfield The Early Works. I think I made a best offer of £15 on eBay for this, and I was dithering over it for a while because even as I'd bought other Broomfield standalone films and box sets before this, I still wasn't certain I wanted a complete library. But I'm so glad that I got this. The films on it are Who Cares, which was his first work basically, from 1970, only 18 minutes long, it's black and white, it's very low budget, and it's basically his film school end of term project really. Proud to Be British, which is 30 minutes from 1973. Behind the Rent Strike, 50 minutes, 1974. Now then, Juvenile Liaison from 1975 at over an hour and a half is the crown jewel in this. I wanted to talk a little bit more in detail about Juvenile Liaison and its sequel as well. That was a film that was actually banned in this country for a long time. It showed what was a juvenile liaison scheme that the police and the government at least called it back then. I think certain schemes exist that are similar these days in certain areas of the UK, but they might have a different name. But basically, it was a police scheme, juvenile liaison, and they were kind of trialling it or piloting it in Blackburn, Lancashire, in the 1970s. And it was basically plainclothes coppers picking up kids who were truanting and shoplifting and then bringing them home to the parents or lecturing them in the headmaster's office at school. That is the best film on here, to be honest. And the sequel, which kind of is a bit out of place on this early works because the sequel didn't come out till 1990, whereas all the other films on here, well, not all of them actually, but I'll get onto that later, but the majority are from the 70s here. Juvenile Liaison 2, the sequel, basically catches up with a lot of the kids, and you know, it was 15 years almost after the original one came out, although for many years it was banned. The police and the government just suppressed it because they believed it showed the police in a bad light, and well, no spoilers, but if you watch it, yeah, you can kind of see that. But that's the best one on here, and the sequel as well, Juvenile Liaison 2, because it's very interesting to sort of meet these kids who you see in the first film in adulthood, really, and find out, did anything become of them? Were they kind of tearaways in adulthood like they were in childhood, really? Other films on here: Tattooed Tears from 1978, Driving Me Crazy from 1988, so we kind of jumped 10 years in the timeline here. So this early works title for me is not exactly accurate because while yes, all the 70s stuff was early period, for some reason it jumps up to the late 80s for Driving Me Crazy. And the final one is Monster in a Box. I didn't enjoy that. I mean, it was very different to anything Nick Broomfield's done. It was the, what's his name? I need to have a look at the in a box here and just give you a bit more information. Monster in a Box was Broomfield's unique film, his interpretation of the inimitable Spalding Gray's impressionistic, riotous and insightful one-man show. Yeah, it was basically kind of like a theatre monologue from Spalding Gray, filmed for cinema, and it had a couple of mildly amusing bits in it, but I didn't really enjoy it at all. Just for the amount of stuff on here that I've never seen before, which I think was all of it, I've never seen before I got this set. And it's worth it for Juvenile Liaison alone, this, if I'm perfectly honest. So I do really like and recommend the early works set. Arguably an even better set for me is this one that I picked up. This was a really good price on eBay. I think including postage it was £7, and it's 6 discs as well. And it's this Nick Broomfield documenting icons. So this has got a couple of films from the 80s and the rest are from the 1990s. A bump on the back, this 6-film box set brings together the finest examples of Nick Broomfield's astonishing and varied career as Britain's foremost documentary filmmaker. And I wouldn't argue with that. All of the films on here were entertaining at the very least, going up to very entertaining. First one is Chicken Ranch from 1983, and then Fetishes from 1996, showing life in an S&M parlour. One of his most famous films, at least up till that point, is included on here, and I think I'd seen it once before I bought this set. I saw it probably Channel 4 or somewhere years ago, and that is Heidi Fleiss' Hollywood Madam. I mean, Heidi Fleiss, you can go and look her up, and I'm sure those of a certain age, and certainly in America, would be very familiar with the Heidi Fleiss story. That's from 1995, very, very good, that. Soldier Girls from 1981, so these are kind of out of order for whatever reason, at least they are listed on the back. Another of my personal favourites on the set is The Leader, His Driver and the Driver's Wife from 91. That is filmed in South Africa at the kind of tail end of the apartheid era. Like I say, I don't really want to go into too much detail over loads of these because I could be here all day really, but it's excellent, that, and there is a sequel to it as well, but we'll get onto that in a little bit. And the final one on here is Tracking Down Maggie from 94, obviously a film about Margaret Thatcher. There's plenty of special features on here. There's introductions by Nick himself on most of these, additional footage for many of the films, trailer reels, the price I paid for this, it being a 6-disc set and it's split out over 2 sections here, is fantastic really. I'm so glad I picked this up. An absolute steal really, the Documenting Icons box set. Can't remember how much I paid for this next box set, and I think everything else after this is more or less standalone films, apart from like a double set. But this one, I really wanted this, a physical copy of 2 of these films on here, certainly, because I'd seen them plenty of times on streaming services and TV since the early 2000s really. And when I saw that this box set was available on eBay, can't remember how much I paid for it, but it wasn't expensive. I'm pretty certain this was under a tenner. But this is a 3-disc set, Nick Broomfield American Icons, so it's almost a little bit of a spin-off from the Documenting Icons box set. But this has got the 2 films of Broomfield's I've seen the most on here. That's Kurt and Courtney, which is his investigation into the death of Kurt Cobain of Nirvana, obviously, and his kind of expose of Courtney Love as kind of a supposed advocate for free speech, but really she liked to suppress any criticisms, and, you know, as conspiracy theories thrown in as well, which I don't think Nick Broomfield ever really believes in any of them, but it's very, very interesting. And I think almost, if not just as good, is Biggie and Tupac, and there has been a sequel made to that, which we'll get onto as well. That's from 2002. What year was Kurt and Courtney? I think that was something like about 97 or 98, I think. 98, Kurt and Courtney. Biggie and Tupac, an investigation into the murders, the assassinations of Notorious B.I.G. and Tupac Shakur. I've seen those no end of times, love them both. You know, I love Broomfield's style of filmmaking really, where the camera work can be shaky, and, you know, he's always got his sort of boom mic and his setup, his Nagra tape recorder around his shoulder, and he's in shot, and he puts across that kind of amateur sort of man about, you know, harassing people kind of vibe. But those are the films that got me into Nick Broomfield as a filmmaker really. And 2 others on here, I think they're both on the same disc on this set, is the 2 documentaries he made about Aileen Wuornos, the notorious serial killer who was put to death, and he actually managed to get the final interview with Aileen the day before she was sent to the electric chair in America. Those 2 films are The Selling of a Serial Killer, 1991, and Life and Death of a Serial Killer, 2003. I think I actually enjoyed the first one, Selling of a Serial Killer, the most. Both good, both well worth watching, obviously. I think the first one, because it kind of focuses a lot on this supposed adoptive mother of Aileen, who seemed younger than Aileen and probably was actually. It was weird. I don't really want to start getting into too much detail with these films, because I urge you to go and try and seek them out for yourself, or if you can't do that, at least read up a little bit about them and about the stories behind each documentary really. Yeah, really glad that I got those in this American Icon set as well. A nice little extra in this is an abridged book here, Documenting Icons by Jason Wood, which is basically Jason Wood, the author, interviewing Nick Broomfield. And it's taken from a fuller book that came out, and it's one I may end up trying to read at some point. But this just focuses on the subjects within this box set, whereas the full book that you can get, and it says on the back, this special edition is a shortened version of the original book. The fuller book probably covers, you know, a lot of the ones on Documenting Icons, the early years, etc. Great set, that American Icons, as is the majority of this Nick Broomfield collection I've amassed here. It's a massive recommendation if you ever see this knocking around anywhere. Now, on to some standalone DVDs and Blu-rays. This one here, when I was first kind of realising I was building up a Broomfield library, I ignored this because I thought, am I really going to get anything out of this? Out of all the films he's done, and I was checking his filmography and seeing what was available, what wasn't, I thought, am I really going to want to see this? But eventually, because it was cheap at HMV, brand new and sealed, I thought, you know what, I'll pick it up, I'll just add it to my basket along with some other things, probably other Broomfield works. And it's this one here, Marianne and Leonard, Words of Love. And you know what, this was way more interesting than I thought it would be. It's not my favourite Broomfield film, don't get me wrong. Released on the Dog Wolf imprint, which seems to be a documentary specialist. But it's about Leonard Cohen and his Norwegian muse, Marianne Eilen, or Elin, and how they met on the Greek island of Hydra in the early 60s. And Nick Broomfield, kind of unnecessarily I have to say, sort of inserts himself into the story because he met Marianne in Hydra in 1968 and he had a relationship with her, similar to how Leonard Cohen did. But it was very interesting, you know, some beautiful shots of Greek islands, certainly, and I am not a Leonard Cohen fan. I've never been a fan of his music. My mother and my father are. They love Leonard Cohen, they always have done. You know, his story, and it's not a comprehensive life story because it's focusing on this relationship, this on-off thing that these two people had, but very, very interesting. And I'm glad I got it. It was cheap and only available on DVD to the best of my knowledge. Then one that I'd seen before, I think I saw this when it came out on probably Netflix or Prime, but what would it be in Broomfield, and I wanted it physically just because it's a collection now. I got Whitney, Can I Be Me? So of course it's the documentary about Whitney Houston. Fairly recent film this, it's got a 2017 copyright date on it. Released via Dog Wolf again, this one a Blu-ray of course, and I thought this was very good when I first saw it. Probably 2018 or 2019 was maybe when I first saw it. It gives a little bit of bump about Whitney. There's another Whitney Houston documentary, nothing to do with Nick Broomfield obviously, that came out. It might have been either just before or just after this one, and that was very good as well. I can't really decide which one's best. I mean, I've seen this one more because I've seen this one twice now, and I will no doubt watch it again because I own it now. I mean, a tragic tale, Whitney Houston, as we know. It's not kind of, you know, sort of leering and almost kind of paparazzi style as maybe Nick Broomfield could tend to drift into, really, with certain films of his, Curtin Courtney being one that I can think of, certainly, that maybe sort of gets a little bit lurid and a bit leering at times. You know, this one's quite respectful, I would say. And maybe in his old age as Nick Broomfield, this will be one of his more recent films. There is one that came out after this that I've got. In fact, is there more than one? Yes, there is. I think he's kind of more or less knocked all the sort of, you know, I'm going to sort of chase you around and kind of get in your face method of filmmaking, which I always found quite entertaining, really, and quite endearing, but a lot of people just don't like Nick Broomfield because of that. Anyway, Whitney, Can I Be Me? Very, very good, that. Now then, this is one that I watched. It's a pretty new release, I think. What's the copyright date on this? 2023, so this might be the most recent film here. I watched it and I was expecting that I'd love it, and I was a bit disappointed. In fact, I was a lot disappointed. It just, something about it just felt kind of hollow, really. It's the Stones and Brian Jones. Now, I'm a big Rolling Stones fan. I'm very interested in stories behind musicians in the 1960s, and certainly a very tragic figure like Brian Jones, who had a lot of hardship and controversy in his life and career, and of course his life came to an end at such a young age. But I don't know, there's interesting bits in this. It just all felt a little bit hollow and poorly filled out, you know. I think, although it would have been a much longer film, I think they really needed to add a lot more information in. You don't tend to learn an awful lot about other Rolling Stones relationships with Jones, and well, it's watchable. I mean, I'm not going to say don't watch it, don't buy it, or don't stream it somewhere. I will say give it a go and you might get more out of it than I did, but for Broomfield work, for me, this is on the sort of lower end, really. It's not bad, and I'm glad I got it, and this was pretty cheap as well. It didn't cost a lot. I think it was on sale at HMV on a reduction. But I think this could have been better. There's certainly better Stones documentaries out there, and presumably there's better Brian Jones docs out there as well. Right then, the last 3 discs here to show you. These are all still sealed. I got them brand new and sealed. And the reason they're sealed, but I can still talk about them, is that I did see the films on YouTube, and then I realised, or I decided after streaming these on YouTube, that I was able to get physical copies of them. So I've got physical copies, and I will watch the physical copies because they've got extras and subtitles and things as well. So I'll just go through these quickly. I think this one I got on eBay, and it's brand new. It's even got kind of a hype sticker there. And this is where I end up doubling up on one of the films, because this is a 2-disc special edition. It's there in the Documenting Icons branding again, similar to the white box set. And it's The Leader, His Driver and the Driver's Wife from 1991, which is already on the Documenting Icons set. And I don't think it's like an extended or updated version, but they've coupled it with its sequel, His Big White Self. Both of these excellent. His Big White Self from 2006, by the way, is better, but they're still both well worth watching. They really are. Obviously I didn't need another copy of The Leader, but the only way to get His Big White Self on DVD was to buy this double set. So when I eventually get round to watching this DVD, whether I'll watch The Leader again first or just watch His Big White Self again, it doesn't matter. But you know, I've got the option to watch one of these films on 2 different discs now. It's about South Africa and post-apartheid South Africa, and the rather intimidating far-right leader in South Africa, Eugene Tedlaunch. Look him up on Wikipedia or Google. He's got a very interesting life story, put it that way. Penultimate one, this one also from eBay. It's one I watched on YouTube. There was some YouTube channel that had this up in very good quality, I will say. And it's Sarah Palin, You Betcha. It kind of looks like a bit silly, really. I don't think that's the best sort of cover art, really, for a Nick Broomfield release. But you kind of get why it's like that, because he's just trying to chase Sarah Palin all over Alaska and all over America. He meets a family. And, you know, it's around that kind of Palin mania period where she came from seemingly out of nowhere to become sort of this big star of the Republican Party. But, you know, she was gaffe prone and she had a lot of enemies and a lot of controversies surrounding her. Yeah, I've been wanting to see this for years, and I was glad I was able to pick the DVD up even after I'd watched it on YouTube anyway. Very basic DVD this. There's no extras or subtitles on it, but I'm just glad I've got a physical copy. I do recommend that, as I recommend the vast majority of this stuff, to be honest. And finally, this was picked up from HMV, and it is basically the sequel to Biggie and Tupac, and another fairly recent film in Nick Broomfield's chronology. This is, of course, Last Man Standing, Suge Knight and the Murders of Biggie and Tupac. So it kind of follows the story on from the original Biggie and Tupac from the early 2000s. Goes into more detail, kind of maybe rights some of the wrongs or some of the iffy theories that were being espoused in the first film. Very, very interesting. I've seen the original Biggie and Tupac numerous times in my life, whereas this one I've only watched once, so I don't really want to say is this better or worse than the first, because I feel I need to watch this again at least once, probably multiple times, before I really decide which of the two in this kind of series I like the best, really. It is available on YouTube, or it was quite recently, as were His Big White Self and Sarah Palin, You Betcha. And there'll be others in this range that if you want to try them out, then you know, just search for Nick Broomfield films on YouTube, and I'm sure a lot of these will come up in some form. You can try them out and they won't cost you any money. But I like physical media, I like to collect films, I love documentaries, and Nick Broomfield, a pioneer in my opinion, and I'm really happy that I've got a lot of his work. Is there stuff I'm missing? From what I can tell, although he's released other films, he's even done a couple of kind of dramatic films really that are available on DVD. I may try them out at some point because I think they're quite cheap, but they don't really fit in because they're not documentaries. so they don't really fit in my collection. And there's one or two other documentaries that I know he's been involved in, or he's been heading up, that don't seem to have ever got a physical release and are difficult to find on the internet to stream anywhere as well. But basically that is quite a comprehensive collection. That might be sort of everything on physical media that is available from him, really. If anyone would like me to review any of these films in more detail, please let me know. Either get in touch with me privately if you prefer, or just leave a comment down on this video, really. I've not done a full-on documentary review in a long time, and it is something I would like to get back into, but you know, when you watch a lot of docs, which I do, I'm always checking Netflix to see what they're bringing out. They seem to bring out something interesting, sometimes a couple of things really every month, and other streaming services as well as you know, stuff that I just want to re-watch that's in my own library. So I kind of let the documentary reviews slip by the wayside a bit, but if there's anything here today that you would like me to talk about in more detail and to do a proper review on, then just let me know, and I will watch the film again, whichever one you request, and then do a proper review video about it. But I'll leave that up to you. You know, if you're not bothered, if you're just happy with me showing the DVDs and not much else, then that's fine. I'm happy to do that here today too. I've got time then to dedicate to other things. But thank you all for watching. Hope you enjoyed this different sort of video from me today. A look at my Nick Broomfield documentary collection. I want to say special thanks to my wonderful subscribers and generous patrons. I'm going to go now. Let me know what you think of all these. Are you a Nick Broomfield fan? Have you even heard of him? There'll be some out there who'll be like, well, I don't know who that is. But if you don't know him, then you'll kind of know the work that he has done over the years to some extent, and the kind of, certainly the influence that he's had over the likes of Louis Theroux and these other documentarians that I'm forgetting as I sit here. But Broomfield's been a big influence on them. But anyway, please join me again for my next DVD and Blu-ray and documentary related video, whenever that might be. Cheers everyone. See ya!